Good morning. This is Omar Serrata with the Tilted Lawyer Podcast, and I'm here to talk about a very polarizing case. I mean, I don't know how polarizing it is. It's been politicized for sure. People have been using this case for their own political agendas, for which I don't care to comment on. I'm going to comment on it eventually, but this is the case of Laken Riley, this 22-year-old nursing student. Minding her own business, going on a jog out in sunny Georgia, where she was stalked and hunted down and murdered at the hands of one Jose Ibarra. She struggled and fought for her life for 18 minutes. There was a 911 call that documented her ultimate demise. We're going to listen to some of those things. We're going to talk about the evidence that was used to convict him at trial. We're going to talk about his sentencing. We're going to talk about a lot of different things and what we are to make of all of this in light of the changing landscape of America as it stands in the year of our Lord, 2024, this November 23rd. So, folks, it's going to be a somber show, but we're going to make the best of it. So you're going to want to stick around. Let's get started.
Whatever you might be going through and wherever you might be, this is Omar Serrata with the Tilted Lawyer Podcast. I'm here to take your mind off of things. Yes, I'm an attorney. No, I'm not giving you legal advice. We're going to sit and talk like people, as these are the candid thoughts of one practicing attorney, and it's after hours. So have a seat. Feel free to have a drink and join me. Let's get started.
Good morning, folks. I hope you will excuse the sunglasses. I've been fighting off illness for all week. And the only way that I was going to be able to sit here in front of these lights was through the aid of my Top Gun Aviator sunglasses. Thanks, Bruce. And so it's like that song, wearing sunglasses at night. It's not night, but it's like, and it's inside. Sunglasses inside. There's got to be rules against that, right? Listen, Laken Riley. What to make of all of that? This is an overview of the case. She's a 22-year-old nursing student from Augusta University, murdered on February 22nd of 2024 while jogging at the University of Georgia in Athens. Her body was discovered in Oconee Forest Park. The coroner determined that the cause of death to be blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. And very chillingly, I'm sure if you're watching this show, you must have at least been made aware that there was a 17-minute 911 call where she was fighting for her life at the hands of this monster. And it appeared at the beginning of that call that she was trying to mouth or communicate the words help or help me or something to that effect. In the midst of that struggle, you can hear audibly the sound of what was ultimately discovered to be a rock that was used to inflict the blunt force trauma that ultimately took her life. I don't remember how many blows it was, but it was several, 3 or 4 or something like that in rapid succession. You could hear Ibarra's voice in the video. It was one of those things that was, it kind of just made you stop in your tracks. This young girl, nursing student, just a kid, going out for a run in an idyllic, sunny day in Athens, Georgia, like so many of you are apt to do. And she was hunted down by this guy who earlier in the day was seen peering through some of the windows there in the residences in Georgia, a peeping Tom. He was on the prowl. He was looking for somebody. Guy's married. Guy is an undocumented immigrant. And because of that, and because of the changing landscape of politics, people have used this case to try to politicize this has no place in a case like this. The headline should be young college girl loses her life at the hands of a monster, whether or not he was an immigrant or a native-born American. Does it really matter if we can find one common definition for this killer insofar as that he was a monster and deserving of all of the punishments and the perils that are becoming of somebody that's been convicted of what he was convicted of? So his name is Jose Antonio Ibarra, a 26-year-old Venezuelan man. He had entered the United States illegally in September of 22. He was apprehended at the border, but for reasons unknown, later released into the country. He had a history of arrests, both by federal and state officials, which my understanding of immigration law, the way that I knew it back in 2016, should have barred his entry into the United States. But again, for reasons unknown, I haven't been an immigration attorney for a long time. And I was never really exclusively an immigration attorney. I had to do that because I work for a law firm and they made me do it. And if you know anything about working in immigration, it sucks your soul, man. It's like you have all these depressing cases, and oftentimes you have clients that have no ability to win their case, but you'll see immigration attorneys take their $15,000 retainers anyway at the hopes that they might get their asylum application granted, and in the hopes that they might not be deported and separated from their children who were U.S. born because they entered illegally and ended up having children. Whatever you think about those scenarios, whatever your political views, I don't care. I don't care. The bottom line is this guy, Ibarra, had no business being in the country given his criminal record, and he was. He was here. In September of 23, he was arrested in New York City for injuring a child and a motor vehicle license violation. Injuring a child. In October of 23, he was arrested with his brother in Athens on theft charges. His brother was reported to be a member of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. I have no idea if I pronounced that right. But given all of those known variables, everything that I understand and know about the immigration code in America means that they had no business being here. Their asses should have been deported a long time ago. Gang affiliations tied to Venezuelan gangs, get them the F out of here. Criminals injuring children, committing acts of theft, get them the F out of here. Whatever your affiliation, red or blue or in between, both sides, I assume, would be on the same the same side in knowing that. Believe it or not. We're all a lot more alike than we care to think. So Ibarra, he had a bench warrant that was issued for his arrest in December of 23 for failing to appear in court for a shoplifting case. The guy was a real peach of a guy, wasn't he? So after Riley's death, the police questioned Ibarra because of a jacket with Riley's hair that was found in a dumpster near his apartment. They got him on surveillance. They got his voice on the 911 call. They had this guy dead to rights. They observed his knuckles, found that they were red. They had scratches on his arms. So they arrested him. Went to trial in May of 24. They had a grand jury indicting him on 10 separate charges. 3 counts of felony murder, malice murder, kidnapping with bodily injury, aggravated battery, aggravated assault with intent to false imprisonment, hindering an emergency telephone call, concealing the death of another, and for peeping Tom laws as they stand in the state of Georgia. Pled not guilty to all the charges because, of course, he did. Bail was denied, obviously. The district attorney sought life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Why? I don't fucking know. If anybody warranted a trip to the electric chair, this would be the guy. And I'm sure that that's been long since outlawed in the state of Georgia. I don't know for sure. It's just one that I would favor bringing back for this guy. Just make sure you keep the voltage down really, really low to ensure maximum suffering, is what I would say. I once wrote a paper in law school that was geared towards the Eighth Amendment. What I argued for was an expansion of the death penalty to bring back the firing range, bring back the guillotine, bring back torture chambers, and expand it to encompass violent rapists, pedophiles, and the like. Obviously, it was a law school paper, so it wasn't going anywhere, but that should give you an idea of what I think should happen to this guy. I don't know. Look, I know some things being a criminal defense lawyer about what happens to these kinds of guys in prison. Maybe it is a more severe sentence that he live for the rest of his life with the entirety of the prison population made aware of what he was convicted of at trial. He's not going to have an easy go of it, and I hope that it lasts a really long time. So on November 20th of just recently, 2024, Judge Haggard found him guilty on all counts. I mean, the jury found him guilty, sentenced him to life in prison without parole, and now we're dealing with the aftermath. Just very quickly, let's go over a timeline of what happened here. So February 22nd, less than a year ago, 9 months ago, Laken Riley, 22-year-old nursing student, at the peak of her powers, about to graduate, promising career in nursing, solid family members that love her, a mother, siblings, cousins, extended family, just a solid family. Attending Augusta University, goes for a morning jog on the campus of University of Georgia in Athens, does not return from her run. Her phone calls 911 around that time. But there's no dialogue in the call. You could hear the 911 operator trying to make contact. I've heard this operator be criticized for her inability to act or not dispatching somebody immediately or whatnot. It's important to realize that when this call was made, AT&T was experiencing an outage in that area. I'm not even sure if they would have initiated location procedures for Laken that they would have found anything. And if you just listen to the call, it's you can't tell. It sounds like silence. You can hear what appears to maybe be a scuffle, but if you don't know the context, I don't know. Ultimately, people were dispatched and they found her. So around noon, Riley's roommate contacts the University of Georgia campus police to report her missing. At 12:38 p.m., University of Georgia police discovered Riley's body in a wooded area behind Lake Herrick near the university's intramural fields. She had visible injuries and was pronounced dead at the scene. Her skull was disfigured as the result of the blunt force trauma that she endured at the hands of Ibarra. Police identified Jose right away, 26-year-old Venezuelan living in Athens, as a suspect in the case. They had him on security footage showing him discarding a jacket and gloves near his apartment. The jacket had Riley's DNA and hair on it. I mean, it was open and shut. As open and shut as it gets. He's arrested. He's charged with murder, among other things. It was reported that he was in the U.S. illegally, having entered in 2022. Arrest affidavits had revealed that Ibarra's skull was disfigured during the attack. A Clark County grand jury indicted him on those 10 charges that we talked about. On November 13th, he waived his right to a jury trial, opts for a bench trial. Judge finds him guilty. They began the trial on November 15th. By November 20th, Judge Haggard found him guilty of all charges. I wonder what the strategy would have been to opt for the bench trial as opposed to a jury trial. I mean, not that a jury trial, I'd imagine, would have been any better. If anybody was not going to get a juror's sympathy, it was not going to be this guy. But they go for the bench. Maybe they thought they could. Usually, when you select a bench trial over a jury trial, the defense strategy is that, look, this is going to be a highly emotionally charged case. There's no chance with the jury because they're going to convict him based off of emotion, and they're not going to look at the real possibility of reasonable doubts. But a judge is above all of that. They're smarter than that. They understand the law better. We got a better chance with him. That's usually the strategy. I don't know if that was their strategy in this case. I just know that whatever their strategy didn't work. He was convicted on all of the charges, including the throwaway peeping Tom charge, and then sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The DA had elected not to go for the death penalty. Why? I don't know. Who was Laken Riley? Now let's talk about her for a minute. I don't know what the average age of my audience is. YouTube demographics tells me that most of you are between the ages of 25 and 45. The second biggest demographic is those of you who are between 45 and 65. I know that's pretty all-encompassing, but that's my demographic. So many of you have children who are 22. Many of you are on the path to having children that will reach that age someday. I have a daughter who's in college, and it's a magical time. It is a time of extreme jubilation because holy shit, we're free. We're not governed by bells and whistles anymore. High school schedules and mandatory having to be at school. You have a little bit of freedom. Oftentimes you're away from the parents. You got your own place. Maybe you're staying in a dormitory. Maybe you got a roommate or two. All of a sudden you could have girls over to your place or boys over to your place and go to parties without curfews and all these things. And you're imagining what your life as an adult's going to be, fearful and anxious about the prospects of Jesus. Everything is so expensive and I don't have anything because I'm making like $20,000 a year or whatever they're making while going to school and living off of ramen noodles and going to YouTube for ramen noodle recipes to try to spruce it up a little bit. And all of the things that go into young adulthood. And here's this young girl, no different. She just wanted to take a little jog, take in the sights, take in the sounds, take in the environment, and find herself a nice little jog in the middle of a park, in the middle of the day. Jesus. The surveillance footage, and we're going to look at some of it a little bit, was there was plenty of people there. Like it wasn't overly crowded, but it was crowded enough where, I don't know, if you were of college age and looking for a little bit of privacy with your significant other, that park at that time of day would not have been the place for it. You would have had to go elsewhere. There was people there that were onlookers, and yet it happened in broad daylight in that environment, in this little wooded area by this monster who was seen prowling the area. It's incredibly heartbreaking to know that it could happen that way. Oftentimes we hear about these cases and we're not made privy to a lot of the details, but in this case, he got up close and personal and intimate with how she lost her life. Most of you have heard the audio, and I'm going to play a little bit for it later in the show, where she's audibly fighting, struggling to breathe, choking, gasping for air, and then you hear the strikes with the rock to her skull. You hear that piece of shit's voice say something in Spanish, Yo Tango or something like that. And we know that she lost her life, probably the moment that you hear those thumps. And it was this incredibly intimate and striking, startling experience to know that this lady had to endure that. From her point of view, how terrified must she have been? And I don't know the answer to that. I can only imagine if you have daughters of that age, You know, as a dad, you can only do so much to protect your daughters. When my daughter turned 18, I gave a speech at her 18th birthday, and I got a little emotional because, you know, my eldest daughter's 18 years old. Holy shit. How old am I? How old are you? And when you raise your children, it's like, it goes in stages, you know? At first, when they're newborns, you swaddle them up all tight because you want to make sure that they're warm, and you want to make sure that you lay them on their back so they don't flip over and suffocate because they flipped over on accident. So you put pillows there to make sure that they stay upright. You might have a rocker and you're like super extra careful with them, and then you graduate to where maybe they can walk around a little bit, and then they go to the park and they start climbing on things, and you're like right there under them because you know that they're going to fall and hurt themselves, and you're there to protect. And like there's the act of being a parent is to differing degrees. Every single year you let go of your child just a little bit. And it's a never ending thing. You never let go completely, but you can't hold on to them forever in full capacity as if they're newborns. And so they grow, and then they go to school, and you got to trust others that they're going to keep them safe while you go and provide for your children. And you know that they're dealing with pieces of shit at school, you know, bullies and whatnot, and making friends and making enemies and navigating the social norms of life and learning that it's not all marshmallows and rainbows over here, that sometimes life sucks. And then they graduate from kindergarten, they go to elementary school, you put them in extracurriculars, dance class or whatever, soccer, gymnastics, whatever, some kind of sport, baseball, football. And you watch them and their failures and their successes, and you watch them get hurt, and you teach them all the hard lessons, and then they go into junior high school, into high school, and then everything is this gradual letting go. And then you send them off to college. And then what they don't know, that we know as parents, is that the world is a lot uglier than you think. And we can't protect them from all of that. And one of the things that I said to my daughter upon her turning 18 is that I can't save you from what's coming. And what's coming is the universe has designs and plans and lessons for her to learn. And she has to learn them. I can't interfere with that. And the same was true of this young girl's parents and her family. As they watched this young girl, 22, about to graduate college and begin her career, they had all those same thoughts, and I'm sure all those same fears, and I'm sure that they were diligent in the way that they raised her and just trying to keep her safe, and you spend all that time, and then some piece of shit just comes along and just ruins it all and snatches her life. As a father, I can only imagine her father sitting in the courtroom looking at that piece of shit and not wanting to jump over the rails and just get in a good shot or get in a good something, or just, how could you compose yourself? How? But that was Laken Riley. She was originally from Woodstock, Georgia, had graduated from River Ridge High School in 2020. She was a member of the track and cross country teams. She loved to run outdoors. It was a cathartic event for her. I don't know, for some people are runners. I ran before. I used to run marathons when I was about that age, until I formed the opinion that, you know, running is stupid. I'm so bored with this. I'm so bored. You know, the point of running, you're supposed to get out there and just working on your cardio, and you have like your headphones on. It's just like such this boring thing. Like there's nothing to win. You're just there on the road with the elements and running. And I don't know. For me, I prefer faster paced stuff with more direct competition, but others love it. You know, people like to hike. People like to go on walks. People like to go on jogs. She was a cross-country person. It was probably one of the few places where she felt safe and free in this universe, and could avoid her problems for the length of a run, at least. She attended the University of Georgia through the spring of 2023 before she ended up transferring to Augusta University's College of Nursing. She was attending the Athens campus in Augusta University. She remained active in the Alpha Chi Omega sorority, which she joined during her time at the University of Georgia, and was an avid runner who had completed the half marathon in October 2023. She had made the dean's list at Augusta University in the fall of 2023. She was described as a shining light and an outstanding scholar athlete who inspired classmates and teachers with her love of learning and her kindness to all. I often, when you read these things, when you go to these funerals, people, they're trying to encompass who this person was. And oftentimes the answer to that is you're met with these clichéic descriptions: shining light, outstanding scholar athlete who inspired classmates and teachers with her love of learning and her kindness to all. And in some cases, I can't stand cliches, but how else do you describe somebody like that? There's lots of people like that. And if somebody is using that verbiage to describe you, I couldn't imagine she was anything less. I'm sure of it. But going on with this story, Riley's death has received a lot of national attention. And what sickens me about this case is not, in addition to the obvious, it's just that there's people in the political sphere who have used this to try to serve their own political agendas. And it just, as a father, I'm not sure I could take that without having a few choice words of those who chose to politicize this. I couldn't even imagine what his daughter, what his dad, what her mom, what her family is feeling. I know I'm speaking from a male perspective as a father, but because I am a dad. But her family, when I say father, just assume that I mean everybody, all of her family. Her family, by the way, they plan to start a foundation in her name called the Laken Hope Riley Foundation, which will focus on homicide awareness and safety for women. And so we'll see where that ends up going. I'm going to share information about Jose Ibarra, not because I don't want to place any attention on him, other than to understand that there's people like him in the world that you should always be wary of. We talked about him being convicted of various things. Venezuelan citizen, not a U.S. citizen, enters illegally in 22. Arrested the day after Riley's body was found. He's recently been convicted. Prosecutors had argued that Ibarra had been hunting for women on the day of the murder and attacked Riley when she was running. They say that Riley fought back against a sexual assault. And because Riley did not give in to his sexual advances, he became infuriated and decided to bludgeon her to death while trying to asphyxiate her. He's a married guy, by the way. They played a phone call between him and his wife. I don't know anything about his wife, but the conversation that she had with him was striking insofar as she was he's of course denying it. She's beside herself. I just don't understand why they got your DNA on her body and nobody else's. You're bullshitting me. You're bullshitting me. You're lying to me. And she's beside herself crying. And this piece of shit is sitting over there trying to gaslight her into thinking that he's innocent or whatever he's trying to do. Ibarra's defense attorney argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial. What a piece of shit argument. It's not circumstantial when you got surveillance video and voice matching technology pointing to your client and DNA. That's not circumstantial. That is a poor choice of words. I mean, I guess he had to say something, right? But circumstantial, that's not what circumstantial is. Like, circumstantial is like, I didn't see that it was raining, but I walked in the house. When I walked inside the house, everything was dry. When I walked out of the house 2 hours later, everything was wet. Circumstances dictate that I think that it probably rained. That's what circumstantial evidence is. It's not circumstantial if on your Ring camera you can see that it started to rain. So it's a stupid argument, but he tried it. The prosecutors presented evidence that Ibarra's DNA was found under Riley's fingernails and on a jacket that was found in a trash bin in his apartment complex. Her DNA was also found on the jacket and on a hat that he was seen wearing on surveillance footage. Are we still calling it circumstantial evidence, sir? I mean, what is your definition of circumstantial evidence? I wonder. I've been prone to discover over the course of the last month that oftentimes lawyers could be the worst narrators of law and fact that exist. It is what it is, man. Some attorneys, they get into this profession and they use their powers for good. And there are some attorneys that get into this profession and they use their powers for bad. And once you're in, you gotta pick a side, man. There's no bullshit and there's no in between. And if there is an in between, then you're a sociopath. Riley's death has become the focus of a national debate on immigration that I'm not going to get too far into because I'm just not. Republicans have used the case to criticize Biden's border policies, which, if he was able to remain in the country upon a finding that he had crimes that he committed that under normal circumstances would make him deportable, if there's a policy that allows him to remain in the United States on those grounds, there's something wrong with that. I can only speak for when I was an immigration attorney, when Obama was president. Under Obama's policies, his ass would have been deported forthwith. Donald Trump has pledged to deport him. I gotta believe him. I hope that he does enact those policies. Trump blamed Biden's policies for Riley's death, claimed that Biden would never say her name, which was, I hate it when Trump does that. But he did. During the State of the Union address, Marjorie Taylor Greene, lady whom I can't stand, urges Biden to say Riley's name. And this is the piece of shit stuff that just, this is not a political opportunity. I mean, do you think that Biden was not going to make a statement and refuse to say her name? I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we trying to do here? You won the election. And it's stupid shit like that that seeks to keep us divided, and I can't stand it. This is not the case. This is not the time, but certain people think that it is. Biden did say Riley's name, by the way. And then he referred to Ibarra as an illegal, which coincidentally sparked outrage from some Democrats. And to that, I say that's the reason why the election went the way that it did, in part. Because of stupid hangups like that. What the fuck? He was an illegal. What do you want to call him? You standing up for Mr. Ibarra's rights to not be called an illegal? Does he even have that right? What exactly are you upset about by that description? Because it has negative connotations to, you think that this is like an extension of some kind of weird racism. Come on, man. You got to stop that shit. Look, I am a registered independent. I've been both Republican and Democrat in my political life and things that I've registered as. And that whole wing of the Democrats just infuriates me sometimes. They just pick the stupidest fights. The House of Reps passed a bill called the Laken Riley Act, which would require federal authorities to detain unauthorized immigrants accused of theft. I mean, good for them, I guess. I feel like that should already have been enacted. It wasn't just theft he was convicted of, it was other crimes. The bill was introduced by a Georgia Republican, was seen as a rebuke of Biden's border policies. Democrats argued that the bill was a political stunt and would not effectively address border security. And there's probably some truth in all of those statements. But here we are. Oh, what am I missing? Yeah, we talked about the Lake Riley. So this is what Donald Trump basically said. He was particularly vocal in using Riley's death to attack Biden's immigration policies. Trump blamed Biden's policies for her death, stating that he would never say her name. During the 2024 State of the Union, Republican talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. While Republicans focused on immigration, Democrats criticized them for exploiting the tragedy for political gain. Yeah. Do we really need to? Do we need to? I mean, you're about to take office. You're going to have 4 years to do whatever you want, and you're going to have a House and Senate with which to do it. So what was the point of that? What was the point? Conservative media has played a role in politicizing this case. They extensively have covered this murder, blaming liberal policies for crime in American cities. This media attention contributed to Riley's death becoming a national news story and fueling the immigration debate. And if my daughter's death became the stepping stone for your stupid political arguments, I would be infuriated. I don't know what any of you guys think about that. I don't know what your guys' opinions are on immigration. I just know that it is sick that some have chosen this to be the moment that they're going to advance immigration arguments. What? Why? Oh. The evidence used to convict Jose Ibarra, we talked about some of it. A forensic expert got up there and testified that Ibarra's DNA was found under Riley's fingernails, linking him directly to the struggle that took place during the attack. She fought, man, for 18 minutes. She fought. He was wearing a jacket. Her DNA was found on a discarded jacket. He was on surveillance. Discarded gloves had Ibarra's fingerprint was on Riley's phone, meaning what? He handled it during the attack. He tried to prevent her from calling 911. She got off a 911 call for sure. And the fact that his fingerprints is on the phone, either he was handling it during the phone call or before or after her death, but he handled it. And it was the basis of some of the charges against him. Data from Ibarra's phone and Riley's Garmin watch showed that the two devices were in close proximity to each other in the wooded area where Riley's body was found, corroborating the prosecution's argument that Ibarra encountered Riley during her run. There was a Snapchat selfie with clothing. She had posted a selfie on Snapchat earlier on the morning of the murder, wearing clothes similar to what he was seen in the surveillance footage at the dumpster and similar to clothes that a witness saw him wearing when he was looking into her apartment window. There was eyewitness testimony. Ibarra's roommate had testified that the person seen discarding the jacket and gloves in the surveillance footage was Ibarra. His brother came in and identified him. Diego Ibarra confirmed to police that the man in the surveillance was Jose. An additional witness testified that she saw Ibarra peering through her apartment window earlier on that day of the murder. The incident occurred shortly before Riley was killed. Prosecution argued that this demonstrated Ibarra's predatory behavior and intent that day was to do what he did. There were scratches on his body. They noticed scratches on his arms, neck, back. Prosecutors argued those were scratches that were likely defensive wounds inflicted by Riley after the struggle. This is what the defense tried to argue. They attempted to argue that the evidence was circumstantial and did not definitively prove that he killed Riley. So it was like, okay, I know that you got his voice on the 911 call. I know that you got him on the surveillance. I know there's people saying that he's the guy in the footage, but you don't have definitive proof that he killed her. There is no surveillance footage of him actually committing the act. But what about the DNA? Well, you could get DNA anywhere, like sort of like flowers pollinating. Sometimes it's just in the air. And the fact that he was in the vicinity, maybe it was just innocent transfer of DNA. some bullshit argument that they made. I don't know if they made. I'm making it up. They actually suggested that Ibarra's brother Diego could not be ruled out as a suspect. Go figure. However, the judge ultimately found that the evidence presented by the prosecution was compelling and sufficient to convict Ibarra on all charges. The strength of the evidence used to secure a conviction in the case, obviously the DNA and all the other stuff, the forensics, digital data, eyewitness accounts, overwhelmingly pointed to Jose Ibarra as Laken Riley's murderer. Judge found the evidence to be beyond reasonable doubt, leading to the guilty verdict and sentencing of life without the possibility of parole. Let's talk a little bit about the 911 call. So the sources, watching the trial footage regarding the 911 stuff, it was confirmed that Riley's phone connected with 911. They played the 911 call during trial. No dialogue. There was no voices or conversation that were recorded except for two words, Yo Tango. They could hear Ibarra unequivocally say, and we're going to listen to it. The exact time of the call was not really specified. It's not clear if Riley is the one that initiated the call. It's not clear if she somehow butt dialed 911. I don't know if any of you guys have ever done that before. I've done it on accident. It could happen. But one of the charges against Jose was him obstructing or hindering somebody from making an emergency call. So, and it doesn't matter. It was whether or not he was convicted of the charge, he's going to get life without parole anyway, but it was one of the charges. And like I said, I've heard the 911 operator criticized. It's worth noting that Riley's murder occurred during a nationwide outage for AT&T. Go figure. It's not clear that the outage impacted the 911 call. It was just pointed out at trial that it was a thing. Whatever you want to do with that information. So in some, how am I doing on time, Dominic?
You got 44 minutes.
Oh, we're doing wonderful. He was charged with a total of 10 offenses related to the murder of Laken Riley. He was ultimately convicted on all 10. The murder charge, there's one count of malice murder, meaning that the killing was premeditated and intentional. There was 3 counts of felony murder, which occurs when a death happens during the commission of another felony. Even if the death was unintentional. It's like if you commit a burglary and accidentally somebody falls and hits their head on the floor trying to run away from you and they die while you were committing that felony, you can be found guilty of felony murder. That's why the 3 counts, because 3 separate felonies, even though if it's one death, each one of them is good for a felony murder attachment. Doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things? No, because this guy's never getting out no matter what. In this case, the underlying felonies were kidnapping with bodily injury, aggravated assault with intent to and aggravated battery. There was other violent crimes. There was 1 count of kidnapping with bodily injury, and that charge stems from Ibarra forcibly abducting and restraining Riley. So imagine she's like on this running path, and then he just grabs her and just tries to do whatever he's going to do. 1 count of aggravated assault with intent to indicating that Ibarra attacked Riley with the intention of sexualizing her. What's really difficult to consider is Dominic, how many times have you ever gone on a jog and been fearful that you were going to get pulled into a wooded area and sex?
Never.
Now, for those of you that don't know, Dominic is like 6'1", 250 or something like that. I'm like 5'11", 220 or something. I don't know. Most men, they don't live with that fear that they're going to be attacked that way. Most men have never been or are not at risk of being attacked, but females, when they go out, even if they're attacked by a small man, they're constantly in fear of when they're alone, when they're by themselves. And then you could argue that, oh, but she went during the middle of the day. Yeah, well, look what happened. She was dragged into this wooded area, and he did what he did. And whenever you try to say that, I don't know what people try to say. It's just a reality of being a woman that you got to be really careful when you go out by yourself. I don't care how safe you think that you are. I don't care how safe the neighborhood is. There is monsters lurking everywhere. And if they get the chance, while nobody's looking, they will take your life and violate you in the most egregious way possible and leave others to find the remnants of their crime. Ladies, you got to be careful. I don't even know how she could have prevented this. She didn't do anything wrong. She just ran into the wrong monster on the wrong day, who was out there looking for somebody to do this to. And then you consider if she had just given in to his sexual advances, would she be alive? I'm not so sure. You could even make that argument. I think that guy was killing her no matter what. For a guy to take a rock and disfigure her skull. I don't know. I've heard that argued. I just think it's a stupid argument and a pointless one. Aggravated battery, the charges related to the severity of the injuries, blunt force trauma. There was accounts of, we mentioned obstructing the emergency call. There was accounts of evidence tampering. There was accounts of being a peeping Tom. So convicted on all 10 counts. We mentioned all the reasons why and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. I wanted to share with you guys the gravity. Just imagine being in the position where you learn that your daughter or your loved one lost their life. There's video of Riley's mother reacting to the news, and I wanted to share this with you because for people trying to politicize that there is a family out there that is going through this, and we choose to make these political arguments. This is Riley's mom finding out that her daughter had passed.
Okay, let's step over here. Come on, let's go. Come on, all right? It's not good. I don't want to tell you yes or no because I don't have names. I don't know who anybody is. I do know that this is a pretty serious incident.
God bless that mother. That's the initial, where there was hope before, that's the extinguishing of hope. And God bless that officer that had to deliver the news. Imagine having to give that news. How would you do it? How would you prepare yourself to tell a mother that her 22-year-old daughter was just brutally murdered at the hands of a monster? This is a heavy case. I don't know. This is the 911 call, a portion of this 18, or I don't know if it's 17 or 18 minutes. This is a portion of the 911 call that was played in court. You can hear Riley struggling. You can hear the scuffle. You can hear the thumps. At the end of the video, you're going to hear thumps. And what that sound is Ibarra taking a rock raising it in the air and repeatedly striking her in the skull, disfiguring her skull, and taking her life. It was the end. It was documented. And this was it.
At 9:12, you'll hear that the call was hung up, and I'm going to play the call for you. At 9:12, the call was hung up by the caller, not the 911 center. The 911 center did not hang up on Laken Riley. The phone hung up. And at 9:12, they tried to call her back, and there was no answer. This is an enhanced version of the 911 call, and there will be several stipulations between the parties in this case. We will execute a call. And I'd like the court, when listening to the call, right about 55 seconds into the call, you're going to hear a voice.
There's that piece of shit right there.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. Hello, Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me? Clark County 911.
Yo Tango.
Did you hear those thumps in rapid succession? That's him just wailing on her head.
Clark County
Listen to it again.
911.
That's his voice. He says, Yo Tango, or Te Tango. Dominic, you know Spanish?
No.
Clark County 911.
Yo Tango.
It's hard to listen to. That was the 911 call. That was the last moments of Laken Riley's life. The last video I'm going to share with you is the verdict being read against this guy as the judge recited it. And it was a bench trial, so there was no polling of juries or anything like that. It was the judge's decision, his call. And while I share my screen, this is what he said.
A couple of things before I announce the verdict. I want to point out that typically my role in a trial, in a criminal trial, is to manage the process. And the fact finding is done by a jury. That wasn't the case in this trial. I managed the process, try to, and I was also the finder of fact, and that is somewhat of a different role than we typically see. I'll tell you that you may have seen me, I make notes during the trial. I probably filled up 2 legal pads full of notes during the trial, but the closings I want to just listen, and that's what I did. But I wrote down 2 things in the closing. One was a statement by Ms. Ross that the evidence was overwhelming and powerful. And then I also wrote down what Ms. Beck said, that I'm required to set aside my emotions. That's the same thing that we tell jurors in what and we're giving them their job. I would, that's the way I have to approach this. And I did. Both of those statements are correct. I'll now announce the verdict. In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24CR0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery. I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call. I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence. I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom. I find the defendant guilty. I certainly will allow both sides to look at this if you want to do it. The next step is sentencing. I'm prepared to go forward with that now, or if either side suggests that you need a few minutes, an hour break or something to do that, then I'll certainly do that as well. Consider that. Sure.
So, spoiler alert.
Laken Riley.
He was sentenced to life without parole. And so, that is the Laken Riley case. If it is your interest to try to politicize this as a talking point for your immigration reform arguments, then kindly fuck off. Not on my channel. Not today. This case shouldn't be about that. And for whatever politicians try to make it that, then, the universe is coming for them. Folks, this is a tough one. I'm going to wrap up this narrative. It's a tragic case. It was a tough one for me to cover. It was a tough one for me to research and have to listen to, in part because I am a girl dad, and I have a daughter of similar age. And, the thought of seeing her meet her demise at the hands of something that I can't control when I'm like out doing a podcast or something, or out like, I don't know, being anywhere other than there to protect her is, terrifying. And it's tough to reconcile. You can't protect your kids from everything any more than that Riley's dad was able to protect her. And this world, sometimes it's just Jesus. I don't know. Folks, we're going to do Family Law After Dark. We're going to start it at about 12 p.m. Pacific time. That's 3 p.m. Eastern. Adjust your time for whatever part of the world you might be in. But we're going to do that in about 25 minutes or so. I got some special guests. We got the usual suspects. You never know who's going to roll into Family Law After Dark. Sometimes my sister decides to jump in. My mom sometimes she decides to jump in. But we're going to hopefully compose ourselves after having to talk about this very heavy case and reset so that we can do Vlad, and we will do that. But folks, I love all you guys. Ladies, be safe, man. Don't trust men that you don't know. Don't trust people that you don't know. Just be careful. Just be safe. tell people where you're at. Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. Just, I don't know. I love you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you guys on Friday. Dominic, did you drop a link?
Yeah.
Dominic has linked. It's a Family Law After Dark. I hope to see you guys in about 23 minutes or so. I love you all. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.